The storm hit Willow Creek like a freight train, tearing through the pines and slamming sheets of rain against anything dumb enough to stand in its way. Caleb Harrow hunched over the wheel of his beat-up patrol truck, the windshield wipers screeching as they fought a losing battle against the downpour. The radio crackled, spitting out static and half a report about a fender bender down near the old cannery on Highway 101. Another damn night in paradise, he thought, the bitter taste of black coffee still lingering on his tongue from the thermos he'd drained an hour ago. The headlights sliced through the fog, painting the wet asphalt in streaks of yellow. Out here, where the forest met the coast, the world felt like it was drowning, all gray and green blurred into one soggy mess. Cal rubbed a hand across his stubbled jaw, his eyes heavy from too many late shifts. 38 years old, and he still couldn't shake the itch to keep moving, to keep looking, even when the rest of Willow Creek had long since given up on him. He was halfway through a mental rundown of the night as patrol checked the docks, swing by June's diner for a refill, maybe dodge another lecture from Sheriff Carver about letting the past go, when something darted out from the shoulder of the road. A blur of motion, small and frantic, cutting through the rain like a blade. Cal slammed on the brakes, the truck fishtailing on the slick pavement before it shuddered to a stop. His heart jackhammered against his ribs as he squinted through the windshield. It was a kid. A girl, no more than 12, stood frozen in the beam of his headlights. She was soaked to the bone, her dark hair plastered to her face like wet ink, her thin frame swallowed by a torn jacket 2 sizes too big. Her hands clutched a small flashlight, a cheap plastic thing, its beam flickering weakly against the storm. But it was her eyes that stopped him, cold, wide, wild, like a deer caught in a hunter's scope. She looked like she'd seen hell and was running straight out of it. "Hey!" Cal shouted, shoving the door open. The wind snatched his voice, hurling it into the rain as he stepped out, boots splashing into a puddle deep enough to soak his socks. "You okay? What were you doing out here?" The girl didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at him like he might be the next monster in her nightmare. Then she opened her mouth, and her voice came out raw, cracked, barely audible over the storm. "They're coming! Please, help my brother!" Cal's got twisted. For years on this job, hell, 10 years if you counted the early days, and he'd learned to trust that feeling, the one that said this wasn't just some kid lost in the rain. He took a step closer, hands raised to show he wasn't a threat, his rain-soaked uniform clinging to his shoulders. "Whoa, slow down, kid. Who's coming? Where's your brother?" Her head whipped around, scanning the darkness behind her, like she expected something to lunge out of the trees. "Down by the docks," she said, her words tumbling over each other. "They've got Noah. They'll kill him if you don't hurry." Noah. A name. That was something. Cal's mind raced, piecing it together. Docks, a brother, a chase. The docks were a mile south, a rotting stretch of pier and warehouses nobody bothered with anymore, not since the fishing industry dried up. "All right," he said, keeping his voice steady, the way he used to when Lily woke up screaming from a bad dream. "Get in the truck. We'll find him." She hesitated, her flashlight trembling in her grip, its beam jittering across the road. For a second, he thought she'd bolt, vanish back into the storm like a ghost. Then she nodded, quick and sharp, and scrambled around to the passenger side. Cal climbed back in, slamming the door against the wind, water dripping from his cap onto the cracked vinyl seat. The girl slid in beside him, her sneakers leaving muddy streaks on the floorboard. Up close, he could see the dirt smudged across her cheeks, the way her jacket hung off her like it belonged to someone twice her size. She smelled like wet earth and fear, and it hit him hard, that same primal scent he'd caught on Lily the last time he'd held her, before the lake took her away. "What's your name?" he asked, cranking the heat to knock the chill off her shivering frame. Ellie, she whispered, her eyes locked on the windshield. Ellie Tate. Okay, Ellie Tate, Cal said, shifting the truck into gear. Tell me what is going on. Who has got your brother? She swallowed hard, her small hands twisting the flashlight like it was a lifeline. The men, she said. They've had us for I don't know, a long time. We got away tonight, but Noah fell behind. They grabbed him by the pier. I heard him screaming. Cal's jaw tightened. Men. A long time. Kids didn't talk like that unless something ugly had gone down. He pressed the gas, the truck lurching forward as the tires gripped the road. How many men? What do they look like? I don't know, Ellie said, her voice breaking. 3, maybe 4. One as big, real tall, with short hair. Another as got a scar on his neck. They hit him when he wouldn't stop crying. The image flashed in Cal's head, a boy, younger than Ellie, taking a fist to the face. His knuckles whitened on the wheel. We'll get him, he said, more to himself than to her. Just hang on. Highway 101 wound south, the forest pressing in on both sides, pines bending under the storm's weight. The radio hissed again, but Cal ignored it, his focus narrowing to the girl beside him, and the brother she'd left behind. He'd seen plenty in Willow Creek drunks, petty thieves, the occasional meth head, but this felt different. Darker. Like the kind of shadow that had swallowed Lily whole. Ellie pointed suddenly, her finger jabbing at the windshield. There. Turn there. Cal yanked the wheel, the truck veering onto a gravel road that snaked toward the coast. The headlights bounced over ruts and puddles, illuminating a sign half buried in mud. Willow Creek Pier 0.5 miles. The docks were close now, their skeletal outline just visible through the fog. He was about to ask Ellie for more anything, a detail to grab onto when a pair of headlights flared in the rearview mirror. Bright, blinding, closing fast. A black SUV, its grille gleaming like a predator's teeth, roared up behind them, eating the distance in seconds. Shit, Cal muttered, his foot slamming the gas. The truck jolted, engine groaning as it fought the wet gravel. Ellie, get down. She ducked, curling into the seat, her flashlight clattering to the floor. The SUV swerved, its horn blaring a sharp, angry blast that cut through the storm. Cal gripped the wheel with one hand, the other fumbling for his service pistol holstered at his hip. His pulse pounded at his ears, drowning out the rain. Who are they? He barked, eyes flicking between the road and the mirror. Them. Ellie cried, her voice muffled against the seat. The men from the house. They found me. The house. Another piece too vague to pin down. Cal didn't have time to dig deeper. The SUV rammed the truck's tailgate, metal screeching as the impact shoved them forward. The wheel jerked in his hands, the truck skidding toward the ditch. He cursed, yanking it back, tires spinning for traction. Hold tight, he shouted, flooring it. The pier was dead ahead now, a jagged line of wood and rust stretching into the black water. He could see the warehouses looming, their broken windows staring like empty eyes. Somewhere in there was Noah, and Cal was about to let these bastards take Ellie back too. The SUV swung wide, trying to cut him off, but Cal swerved hard, clipping its fender. Sparks flew, metal grinding, and for a split second, he caught a glimpse of the driver, a hulking figure, buzz-cut hair, face shadowed under a hood. The tall one, maybe. Didn't he matter? He wasn't stopping. The truck skidded to a halt at the pier's edge. Gravel sprang into the waves below. Cal threw it into park, gun in hand, and turned to Ellie. Her face was pale, her breath coming in shallow gasps, but she met his gaze with something fierce, something alive. Stay low, he said, popping the door. I'm getting your brother. She nodded, clutching the edge of the seat. Hurry. Cal stepped out into the storm, rain lashing his face, the wind howling like a banshee. The SUV screeched to a stop 20 yards back, its doors flying open. Two figures emerged, the tall one and another, shorter, with a scar glinting wetly on his neck. They moved fast, purposeful, like wolves closing on a kill. He raised his pistol, the weight of it steady in his grip. For years ago, he'd lost everything on a night like this. Not again. Not tonight. Police, he roared, his voice cutting through the tempest. Drop your weapons and get on the ground. The tall one laughed, a low, guttural sound that carried over the wind. You're out of your depth, cop, he called back, his hand dipping into his coat. Cal didn't wait to see what came next. He fired 2 shots, sharp and clean, the muzzle flash lighting up the rain. The tall one staggered, clutching his shoulder, but the scarred one charged, a knife gleaming in his fist. The pier stretched out ahead, dark and treacherous, hiding a boy Cal didn't know and a past he couldn't escape. He tightened his grip on the gun and ran toward it, the storm swallowing him whole. Cal's boots pounded the pier, the wood groaning under his weight as the storm raged around him. Rain stung his eyes, blurring the world into streaks of gray and black, but he kept moving, gun raised, the echoes of his shots still ringing in his ears. Behind him, the tall guy was down, cursing into the gravel, blood seeping through his fingers. The scarred one, though he was fast, closing the gap, his knife catching glints of lightning as he charged. Ellie, stay in the truck, Cal shouted over his shoulder, his voice nearly lost in the wind. He didn't look back to see if she obeyed, couldn't afford to. The warehouse loomed ahead, a hulking shadow at the end of the pier, its rusted metal walls rattling like a tin can in a gale. Somewhere inside was Noah, and Cal was about to let another kid slip through his fingers. The scarred man lunged, blades slashing through the air. Cal twisted, the knife grazing his sleeve, tearing fabric but missing flesh. He swung his pistol up, slamming the butt into the guy's jaw. A crack split the night teeth or bone, Cal didn't care which. The man stumbled, spitting blood, but didn't go down. Tough son of a bitch. Last chance, Cal growled, leveling the gun at the man's chest. Drop it. Scarface grinned, a jagged slash of teeth in the dark. You're dead either way, cop. He feinted left, then dove right, tackling Cal into the pier's railing. The wood splintered under their weight, and for a heartbeat, Cal felt the drop 30 feet to the churning black water below. His free hand grabbed a post, the other shoving the gun barrel into the man's gut. He pulled the trigger. The shot was muffled, swallowed by the storm, but the scarred man's eyes went wide, then blank. He slumped, sliding off Cal into a heap, the knife clattering onto the boards. Cal sucked in a ragged breath, his chest heaving, rain mixing with sweat on his face. No time to think. He kicked the blade into the sea and ran for the warehouse. The door hung crooked on its hinges, banging in the wind like a drunk pounding for a drink. Cal slipped inside, the air hitting him like a punch, damp, thick with the stench of seaweed and rot. His flashlight beam cut through the gloom, bouncing off stacks of crates and coils of rusted chain. The place was a graveyard of the town's old fishing days, abandoned to the crabs and the tide. Noah, he called, his voice echoing off the walls. Noah Tate, you in here? It's the police. A shuffle faint, almost lost under the storm as roar came from the far corner. Cal swung the light, catching a flicker of movement behind a pile of splintered pallets. He moved fast, boots crunching over broken glass and fish hooks, every shadow a threat. The crates loomed around him, some cracked open, spilling out glints of metal and plastic jewelry, pill bottles, stuff that didn't belong in a fisherman's haul. He rounded the pallets, and there he was, a boy, no older than 8, curled tight in the dirt. His wrists were bound with duct tape, his face streaked with mud and tears, a bruise blooming purple across his cheek. Dark hair hung in his eyes, and a whale-shaped pendant dangled from his neck, swinging as he flinched from the light. "Noah?" Cal knelt, keeping his voice low, soft, the way he talked Lily through thunderstorms. "Hey, buddy, it's okay. I'm here to get you out." The boy's eyes darted up, huge and scared, but he didn't move. His lips trembled, and a whisper slipped out, barely audible. They're still here." Cal's blood ran cold. He snapped the flashlight off, plunging them into darkness, and listened. The storm howled outside, waves smashing the pier, but there a scrape, a footfall, coming from the other side of the warehouse. He eased his gun up, shifting to shield Noah with his body. "Stay down," he hissed. "Don't make a sound." The footsteps grew louder, deliberate, boots on concrete. A shadow stretched across the wall, tall and lean, not the buzz-cut thug or the scarred one. A third player. Cal's mind raced. Ellie said 3, maybe 4. He'd dropped 2, but this guy was fresh, and Cal was running on fumes. "Kid gone, Ricky," a voice called, rough as gravel, from the dark. "Little bitch took off. Boss ain't he gonna like this?" Another voice answered, closer, sharp with a smoker-s rasp. "Check the crates. She's gotta be hiding somewhere." Cal pressed a hand to Noah's shoulder, feeling the boy's shallow breaths. 2 of them now, maybe more outside. He couldn't take them head on, not with a kid to protect. His eyes scanned the warehouse, landing on a rusted ladder leading to a catwalk overhead. If he could get Noah up there, they'd have a shot at slipping out the back. "All right, buddy," he whispered, cutting the tape off Noah's wrists with his pocket knife. "We're gonna move. You stick with me, got it?" Noah nodded, quick and jerky, clutching the whale pendant like a talisman. Cal hauled him up, keeping low, and edged toward the ladder. The footsteps circled closer, flashlights slicing through the dark, missing them by inches. He pushed Noah ahead, the boy's small hands scrambling up the rungs, metal creaking under their weight. A beam swept over them just as Cal hit the catwalk. "There!" the gravel voice shouted, and a gunshot cracked, pinging off the railing. Cal fired back blind, 2 rounds into the shadows, buying time. He grabbed Noah, dragging him along the narrow walkway toward a busted window at the far end. The glass was gone, just jagged edges framing the storm outside. Wind roared in, soaking them as Cal peered down a 10-foot drop to the pier, then a straight shot to the truck. "Can you jump?" he asked, voice tight. Noah's eyes widened, but he nodded again, braver than any 8-year-old should have to be. Cal went first, landing hard on the wet boards, pain shooting up his knees. He reached up, catching Noah as the boy leapt, his small frame light as a bird in Cal's arms. They hit the pier running, the storm swallowing the shouts behind them. The truck was 50 yards off, Ellie's pale face pressed to the window, her flashlight glowing like a beacon. Cal's lungs burned, his boots slipping on the slick wood, but he didn't stop, didn't dare look back. Then Noah stumbled, his voice cutting through the wind. "Wait!" They said, "Lily's alive, you're Lily?" Cal froze, the name a knife to the gut. He spun, grabbing Noah's shoulders, rain streaming down his face. "What do you say? Who asked Lily to you?" The boy's teeth chattered, his eyes locked on Cal's. "They talked about her, a girl with a pink coat. Said she is special, worth more." I heard him. For years crashed over Cal like a wave. Lily, 5 years old, blonde curls, and a pink raincoat, vanishing into the fog by whispering pines. "Gone," they said. "Drowned," they said. But here was this kid, bruised and shaking, saying her name like she was more than a ghost. Before he could press further, headlights flared again, the SUV, back on its feet, barreling down the pier. Cal scooped Noah up, sprinting the last stretch to the truck. He yanked the door open, shoving the boy inside next to Ellie, who threw her arms around her brother, sobbing into his hair. "Buckle up," Cal barked, slamming the truck into gear. The engine roared, tires spinning before they caught, and the truck lurched forward, peeling away from the pier. The SUV gave chase, its horn screaming, but Cal floored it, the road blurring beneath them. In the rear view, the warehouse faded into the storm, a black smear against the night. Beside him, Ellie clutched Noah, her flashlight rolling on the floor, its beam flickering like a heartbeat. And in Cal's chest, something cracked open, a hope he'd buried 4 years ago, clawing its way back to life. The Willow Creek police station squatted at the edge of town, a low brick building with peeling paint and a flickering neon sign that read Sheriff's Office in buzzing blue. Cal pulled the truck into the lot, gravel crunching under the tires, the storm still hammering the roof like it wanted in. He killed the engine, the sudden quiet deafening, and glanced at the kids in the passenger seat. Ellie had her arm around Noah, her jaw set tight, while the boy stared at his muddy sneakers, the whale pendant swinging from his neck. "Stay close," Cal said, popping the door. "We're safe here." Ellie's eyes flicked to him, sharp and skeptical, but she nodded, helping Noah slide out. The rain had eased to a drizzle, leaving the air thick with mist and the smell of wet pine. Cal led them inside, his boots leaving wet prints on the linoleum, the kids trailing behind like shadows. The station was a time capsule with paneled walls, a corkboard plastered with faded flyers, the hum of a coffee maker that hadn't been cleaned since Reagan was president. Deputy Rollins, a dowdy guy in his 20s, looked up from his desk, eyebrows climbing as he clocked the soaked trio. "Jesus, Cal, what do you drag in?" Rollins said, pushing his chair back. "You look like you've been through a car wash." "Get the sheriff," Cal snapped, guiding Ellie and Noah to a bench by the wall. "Now." Rollins blinked, then shuffled off, muttering something about overtime. Cal crouched in front of the kids, his knees popping from the strain of the night. "You two okay? Anything hurt?" Noah shook his head, silent, his small hands twisting the pendant. Ellie brushed her wet hair back, her voice steady despite the tremble in her fingers. "He has got a bruise. They hit him." "I'm fine." Cal's eyes flicked to the purple mark on Noah's cheek, anger flaring hot in his chest. He stood, turning as Sheriff Dale Carver strode in, his boots thudding like he owned the place. 50 years old, broad-shouldered, with a salt and pepper mustache and a badge polished to a gleam, Carver looked every inch the small-town lawman, the kind who'd shake your hand at the harvest festival and fine you for a busted taillight the next day. "What is this mess, Harrow?" Carver said, crossing his arms, his drawl thick as molasses. "Rollins says you've got a couple of strays." "They're not strays," Cal said, keeping his tone even. "Ellie and Noah Tate. Found 'em down by the docks. Someone else after them chased us in a black SUV armed. I dropped 2 of 'em, but there's more." Carver's brow furrowed, but his eyes stayed cool, too cool. "Chased you? What, some kind of road rage thing?" "No," Cal said, stepping closer, lowering his voice so the kids wouldn't hear. "They were holding Noah in a warehouse. Crates full of pills, jewelry stolen or worse. Ellie says they've been kept somewhere, forced to work." And Dale, he paused, the words sticking in his throat. "They mentioned Lily. My Lily." Carver's face didn't move, but something flickered in his gaze, a shadow, quick and gone. He rubbed his mustache, glancing at the kids. "Lily, huh? That's a hell of a claim, Cal. Kids get lost all the time, make up stories. You sure they're not spinning you a yarn?" "They're not lying," Cal said, his voice hardening. "I saw the bruises. Heard the gunshots. This is real." Carver sighed, long and slow, like a man humoring a drunk. "All right, let us say you're right. Why do they target these two? And what is this about your girl? I don't know yet, Cal admitted, frustration clawing at him. Noah said they talked about a girl in a pink coat, called her special. Worth more. Sound familiar? Carver shrugged, his shoulders heavy with practiced ease. Sounds like a ghost story, Harrow. You've been chasing shadows since, well, you know. Maybe it's time to let it go. Cal's hands balled into fists, nails digging into his palms. I'm not imagining this, Dale. Those men weren't phantoms. They're out there, and they've got a head start now. The sheriff studied him, then nodded toward the kids. Fine. Get him cleaned up, write a report. I'll send Rollins to check the docks, see if your bogeyman left any tracks. But don't go stirring up a hornet's nest over some kid's tall tale. Cal opened his mouth to argue, but Carver was already turning away, his boots echoing down the hall. Rollins reappeared, holding a couple of blankets that smelled like mothballs. Here, he said, tossing them to Cal. They look half-drowned. Thanks, Cal muttered, draping a blanket over Noah's shoulders, then Les. She pulled it tight, her eyes tracking Carver's retreating figure like she could see through him. He doesn't believe us, she said, quiet enough that Rollins wouldn't hear. He will, Cal said, though he wasn't sure he believed it himself. Carver had been his boss for a decade, a steady hand when Lily went missing, but tonight, that steadiness felt like a mask. Too smooth, too quick to dismiss. He grabbed a notepad from the desk, scribbling down what Ellie had told him: the men, the house, the chase. Noah sat silent, his small frame swallowed by the blanket, until he tugged at Cal's sleeve. Mister, they're not done. They'll come back. Cal met the boy's gaze, saw the weight in it, too heavy for 8 years. They want to get you, he said, the promise rough in his throat. Not while I'm here. Ellie leaned in, her voice a whisper. We can't stay. They know this place. She was right. The station was a Fortress 1 deputy, a locked door, and a sheriff who'd rather sweep this under the rug. Cal's cabin, 10 miles out in the woods, was a better bet off the grid, hard to find. He stood, decision made. Simon, he said, grabbing his keys. We're moving. Rollins looked up from his coffee. Where you going? Sheriff said. Tell him I'm taking them somewhere safe. Cal cut in, ushering the kids toward the door. He wants to argue, he can call me. The mist hung thick outside, curling around the truck like smoke. Cal helped Noah climb in, Ellie sliding beside him, her flashlight clutched tight. As he fired up the engine, the radio crackled. Rollins, probably, relaying some half-assed order from Carver. Cal turned it off. The road stretched into the dark, pines looming like sentinels. In the rear view, the station's lights faded, swallowed by the fog. Ahead lay answers, or maybe just more questions, but one thing was clear: whatever these kids had stumbled into, it was over. And Lily's name, spoken in the storm, burned in Cal's chest like a coal that wouldn't die. The gravel road twisted through the pines, the truck's headlights carving a tunnel out of the dark. Cal kept one hand on the wheel, the other resting on his pistol, the weight of it a cold comfort against his thigh. Beside him, Ellie sat rigid, her flashlight clutched like a weapon, its beam bouncing with every rut in the road. Noah huddled close to her, his whale pendant glinting faintly, his small frame still wrapped in the mothball-scented blanket from the station. The storm had backed off to a drizzle, but the fog hung thick, curling around the trees like a living thing. Cal's cabin was 10 miles out of spec on the map, tucked deep in the woods where the cell signal died and the world forgot you existed. It'd been his refuge since Lily disappeared, a place to hide from the pitying stares and the endless what-ifs. Now it was a lifeline for 2 kids who'd seen too much. You live out here alone? Ellie asked, her voice cutting through the hum of the engine. She didn't look at him, just stared ahead, her jaw tight. "Yeah," Cal said, easing the truck around a bend. "Just me and the trees. Keeps things quiet." Noah shifted, his head tipping up. "Don't you get scared?" Cal's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "Used to. Not anymore." The truth was, he'd traded fear for something heavier, guilt, maybe, or the kind of tired that sank into your bones. For years ago, he'd taken Lily camping at Whispering Pines, a lake 20 miles north. She'd been 5, all blonde curls and giggles, chasing fireflies in her pink raincoat. He'd turned his back for a minute, one damn minute, and she was gone. The search lasted weeks, divers combing the water, volunteers scouring the woods. Nothing. Just a single sneaker, muddy and small, left by the shore. They'd called it a drowning, but Cal never bought it. No body, no closure. The cabin came into view, a squat rectangle of weathered logs crouched beneath a sagging roof. The porch light buzzed, casting a weak glow over the steps, the only sign of life in the dark. Cal pulled up, killed the engine, and scanned the tree line. No headlights, no shadows moving. Yet. "Home sweet home," he said, climbing out. "Let us get you inside." Ellie helped Noah down, her eyes darting to the woods like she expected the men from the pier to burst out any second. Cal unlocked the door, the hinges creaking as he pushed it open. The air inside smelled of pine and dust, the faint tang of wood smoke lingering from the last fire he'd built. A couch sagged against one wall, a coffee table scarred with coffee rings sat in front, and a stone fireplace loomed at the far end, cold and dark. Above it, a faded photo of Lily grinned down gap-toothed, her raincoat bright against the gray lake. Noah stopped short, staring at the picture. "She looks like the girl they talked about." Cal's heart stuttered. He turned, slow, like moving through mud. "What do you say?" Ellie stepped forward, her voice steady but low. "They talked about a girl in a pink coat. Said she was special, worth more." That's what Noah heard. Cal sank onto the couch, his legs giving out. The room tilted, the walls closing in, and for a second, he was back at the lake, shouting Lily's name into the fog. "When?" he managed, his throat dry as ash. "Where do you hear that?" Noah shuffled closer, his blanket dragging on the floor. "In the house. Before we ran. The big guy, the one you shot, he was on the phone. Said that he moved her a long time ago, but she was special. Worth more," Ellie added, her eyes locked on Cal's. "They made us carry stuffed jewelry, pills, little bags of powder. Said kids don't get caught. But they talked about others, ones they sent away." Cal's hands clenched, nails biting into his palms. For years, he'd chased ghosts' leads that went nowhere, nights staring at that damn photo, willing it to talk. And now this 2 kids, bruised and scared, dropping Lily's name like a bomb. "How long have they had you?" he asked, forcing the words out. Ellie shrugged, her jacket rustling. "A while. 2 years, maybe. After Mom and Dad went away. They put us in a home, then took us." 2 years. Cal's mind raced, piecing it together. Lily had been gone for longer than they'd been caught up in this mess. But the pink coat, the timing, it couldn't be coincidence. "What happened to your folks?" "They died," Noah said, his voice small. "Car crash. That's what they told us." Ellie's eyes narrowed. "But it wasn't he. I heard him fighting that night, Mom and Dad. Something about the docks, about telling someone. Then they were gone." Cal leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You think these men had something to do with it?" She nodded, slow and sure. "They didn't want us asking questions." The cabin fell silent, the drip of rain on the roof the only sound. Cal stared at the floor, the worn planks blurring as his thoughts spun. Lily, special, worth more. Ellie and Noah, mules for some bastard's dirty work. A car crash that wasn't an accident. It was a puzzle, jagged and ugly, and he was holding the first pieces. He stood, crossing to the fireplace, and grabbed a box of matches from the mantel. "Get some rest," he said, striking a match and tossing it onto the kindling. "We'll figure this out tomorrow." Ellie didn't move, her gaze flicking to the photo. "She's your daughter, isn't she?" Cal froze, the flames licking up behind him. "Yeah," he said finally, his voice rough. "She was." The fire snapped and popped, throwing shadows across the cabin's walls as the night stretched on. Cal dragged a couple of blankets from the closet, tossing them onto the couch where Ellie and Noah curled up, their small shapes dwarfed by the sagging cushions. Ellie kept her flashlight close, its plastic casing scratched and faded, a lifeline she wouldn't let go. Noah clutched his whale pendant, his breathing slow and steady, already half asleep. Cal sank into an armchair by the window, his pistol on the table beside him, the barrel catching the firelight. He should have been exhausted the chase, the fight, the weight of Lily's name ringing in his ears, but his mind wouldn't quit. Every creak of the cabin, every rustle in the woods outside, set his nerves on edge. Those men weren't done. Ellie was right, they'd come back. He glanced at the kids, their faces soft in the glow. 2 years, they'd said. 2 years of hell, and they were still fighting. He couldn't imagine Lily lasting that long, not at 5, not alone. But Noah's words moved her a long time ago, not at him. A splinter he couldn't pull out. Ellie stirred, sitting up, her blanket slipping to her waist. "You're not sleeping," she said, her voice quiet but sharp. "Neither are you," Cal shot back, leaning forward. "What's on your mind, kid?" She hesitated, her fingers tracing the flashlight's edge. Then she twisted it, popping the base open with a click. A scrap of paper fluttered out, yellowed and creased, landing on the couch. She snatched it up, holding it out to him like it was fragile as glass. Cal took it, the paper crinkling in his hands. The handwriting was shaky, scrawled in blue ink, "If you're lost, find the man with the star." He read it twice, his pulse kicking up. "What's this?" "From my mom," Ellie said, her eyes fixed on the note. "She gave me the lantern before they took her. Said it'd keep us safe." Cal turned the flashlight over, its beam flickering as he aimed it at the floor. A star. His badge glinted on his chest, the metal worn but unmistakable. "She meant a cop," he said, half to himself. "Someone like me." Ellie nodded, pulling her knees up. She didn't trust most of him. Said some were bad, but there'd be one we could find. "I hoped it was you." The words hit him like a punch, soft but deep. He set the note down, running a hand through his damp hair. "Your mom knew something, didn't she? About these men?" "Yeah," Ellie said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "She worked at the docks, cleaning fish. Started asking questions when stuff went missing, crates, not fish. Then they came for her." Cal's got twisted. A mother, sniffing out trouble, leaving a breadcrumb for her kids. He'd seen it before, people who got too close, paid with their lives. "And your dad?" He backed her up, Noah piped up, his voice sleepy but clear. "Told her to tell someone." Then the crash. Cal stared at the fire, the flames dancing like they were mocking him. He reached into his pocket, pulling out his wallet, and flipped it open. A photo slipped free, Lily, holding a flashlight just like Ellie's, its beam pointed at the camera, her grin wide and bright. He hadn't looked at it in months, couldn't stand the ache. But now, she had one too, he said, holding it up. "Same kind. Used to shine it at me when I tucked her in." Ellie's eyes widened, flicking between the photo and her lantern. "They took her stuff," she said. "The men? Kept things from the kids, they moved." Cal's throat tightened. You're saying they've got more like you? Like her? Lots, Noah murmured, curling tighter. They talked about boats. Big ones. The cabin felt smaller, the air heavier. Cal stood, pacing to the window, peering into the fog. Boats. Kids. Lily's flashlight, her coat, her life pieces of a machine he couldn't see yet. He turned back, the photo still in his hand. We're gonna stop them, he said, the words of vow. Starting tomorrow. Ellie met his gaze, fierce and steady. Good. Morning broke gray and damp, the fog clinging to the pines like a shroud. Cal woke to the smell of smoke and the faint clatter of a spoon. Ellie, stirring a pot of oatmeal over the fire, Noah still snoring on the couch. She found the oats in a tin on the shelf, a small act of defiance against the night. Figured you'd need fuel, she said, not looking up as he stumbled over, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Thanks, Cal said, grabbing a mug and pouring coffee from a dented pot. The brew was bitter, strong enough to wake the dead, just how he liked it. He watched her work, her movements quick and sure, like she'd been fending for herself too long. They ate in silence, the oatmeal warm and plain, Noah blinking awake halfway through to shovel a spoonful into his mouth. Cal's mind churned the docks, the men, Lily's name. He needed more, something solid. June Haskell popped into his head, 60 years old, sharp as a tack, and the beating heart of Willow Creek's gossip mill. If anyone had seen something, it'd be her. Gotta make a stop, he said, stacking the bowls. You two up for a ride? Ellie nodded, wiping her hands on her jeans. Noah just followed her lead, sticking close like a shadow. June's diner sat on Main Street, a neon-lit relic with a sign that flickered open in cherry red. The bell jangled as Cal pushed the door, the kids trailing behind. Inside, the air was thick with grease and cinnamon, the jukebox crooning Johnny Cash over the clatter of plates. June stood behind the counter, her silver hair pulled into a bun, her apron stained with years of coffee spills. Well, hell, she said, spotting Cal. You look like you've been dragged through a ditch. Who read the tag-alongs? Ellie and Noah, Cal said, sliding onto a stool. Ran into some trouble last night. Need your ears, June? She raised an eyebrow, pouring coffee into a chip mug and sliding it over. Trouble's your middle name, Harrow. What's the story? Cal leaned in, keeping his voice low. Someone's chasing these kids. Found M at the docks, tied up in a warehouse full of contraband. Men in an SUV armed. They mentioned my Lily. June's hand paused on the coffee pot, her eyes narrowing. Lily, huh? That S.A. name I haven't heard you say in a while. They said she's alive, Cal pressed. Moved somewhere, worth more. You hear anything about the docks lately? June set the pot down, wiping her hands on a rag. Funny you ask. Been seeing Carver down there more than usual couple years back. Started with late night runs. Met some rough types, unloading crates when the town was asleep. Cal's pulse kicked up. Carver? You sure? Seen it with my own eyes, June said, tapping her temple. Big fellow with a buzz cut, another with a scar on his neck. Thought they were smugglers, but I kept my mouth shut. Who'd believe an old bat like me over the sheriff? Me, Cal said, his voice hard. Why didn't you tell me? June snorted. You were a wreck after Lily, Cal. Barely held it together. Didn't he want to pile on? Ellie piped up, her voice cutting through. He one of them. The sheriff. I saw him at the house once. Cal turned, staring at her. You're sure? She nodded, fierce. Tall mustache, talked slow. Gave orders. The diner spun, the pieces snapping into place. Carver, the docks, the kids. Lily. Cal stood, tossing a crumpled $5 on the counter. Thanks, June. Keep this quiet. Always do, she said, pocketing the bill. Watch your back, Cal. That man has got claws. Outside, the fog pressed in, the town waking slow under its weight. Cal hustled the kids to the truck, his mind racing. Carver wasn't he just turning a blind eye, he was in it, deep. And if Ellie was right, the docks were the key. Time to dig. The fog clung to Willow Creek like a wet blanket as Cal steered the truck back toward the coast, the pines blurring past in a smear of green and gray. Ellie sat shotgun, her flashlight rolling on the dash with every bump, while Noah curled up in the back, his whale pendant tucked under his chin. The diner-esque coffee churned in Cal's gut, bitter and restless, Carver's name looping through his head like a bad song. Sheriff Dale Carver, the man who declapped him on the shoulder after Lily went missing, promised to turn over every stone. Now Ellie's words painted him as a monster, and Cal couldn't unsee it. We're going back to the docks, he said, his voice low, steadying himself as much as the kids. That boathouse where I found Noah, there's gotta be something there. Ellie's eyes flicked to him, sharp and wary. They'll be watching. Maybe, Cal said, his grip tightening on the wheel. But we've got daylight now. Harder to hide. The pier came into view, a jagged scar against the slate-gray sea, waves slapping the pilings with a rhythm that matched the pulse in Cal's temples. He parked a quarter-mile out, behind a cluster of wind-bent cedars, the truck's engine ticking as it cooled. The boathouse squatted at the far end, its roof sagging under a mat of moss, windows shattered like broken teeth. No SUV, no shadows moving, just the wind whistling through the cracks. Stay here, Cal said, grabbing his flashlight and pistol. Lock the doors. Anyone comes, you honk the horn. Ellie nodded, sliding the keys from the ignition and passing them to Noah. We've got it. Cal stepped out, the air cold and briny, his boots sinking into the muddy gravel. He kept low, moving through the trees until the pier stretched out ahead, a slick runway to the past. The boathouse loomed closer with every step, its rusted walls groaning as the tide tugged at its bones. He slipped through the same crooked door he'd breached last night, the stench of rot hitting him like a slap. Inside, the gloom was thicker, daylight seeping through the broken roof in thin, watery shafts. His flashlight beam swept the floor glass, fishhooks, the pallets where he'd found Noah. The crates were still there, splintered and half open, their contents glinting, cheap necklaces, pill bottles with labels peeled off, a Ziploc bag of white powder that made his stomach turn. Evidence, raw and ugly, but not enough. He needed names, places, something to tie this to Carver. He moved deeper, the concrete cold underfoot, until his light caught a metal filing cabinet shoved against the back wall, its drawers dented and rusted shut. He wedged his knife under the top drawer, prying it open with a screech that echoed like a scream. Papers spilled out, yellowed manifests, shipping logs, scribbled notes in handwriting he didn't recognize. His hand shook as he flipped through them, the beam jittering across the pages. A list caught his eye: names, ages, destinations. Tommy R., 7, Seattle. Maria C., 9, Portland. Lily H., 5, Vancouver. His breath stopped, the world narrowing to that line. Lily H., 5 years old. For years ago, that deep in her is Lily, marked like inventory. Beside it, a date smudged with water, shipped out, no return. Vancouver. God damn it, he whispered, the paper crumpling in his fist. He dug deeper, pulling out a Polaroid clip to the list: a little girl in a pink raincoat, blonde curls damp with lake water, her eyes wide and scared. Lily. His daughter, frozen in time, staring back at him from a hell he hadn't known existed. Something else fluttered free, a scrap of paper, child's handwriting in blue crayon. Daddy, help me. The letters wobbled, like she'd been shaking when she wrote it. Cal's knees buckled, and he caught himself on the cabinet, the metal cold against his palm. For years, he'd searched the wrong places, believed the wrong story. She'd been here, in this rotting shack, begging for him. A noise snapped him out of it, a crunch outside, gravel under boots. He shoved the papers into his jacket, killed the flashlight, and ducked behind the crates. The door banged open, and a figure stepped in, tall, buzz-cut hair, shoulder bandaged from last night as bullet. The big guy. Alive and pissed. "Check the back," he barked, his voice rough as sandpaper. Another set of boots followed, shorter, stocky, a new face with a beard like steel wool. Two of them hunting. Cal held his breath, easing his pistol free. The buzz-cut guy limped closer, kicking a crate aside, his flashlight beam slicing the dark. "Little bastard s gone," he muttered. "Boss L'll have our heads." "Then we find the sister," Steelwool said, his voice clipped. "She s the loose end." They were 10 feet away, closing fast. Cal weighed his odds 2 against 1, tight quarters, no backup. He could take the shot, but if he missed, Ellie and Noah were sitting ducks. His eyes darted to the ladder from last night, the catwalk a shadow overhead. A gamble, but better than a standoff. He waited until Buzzcut turned, then bolted, hitting the ladder with a clang. "There!" Steelwool shouted, and a gunshot cracked, splintering the rung above him. Cal hauled himself up, the metal slick under his hands, and sprinted along the catwalk, the papers crinkling against his chest. The window gaped ahead, jagged and open. He stopped, didn't he think, just jumped, landing hard on the pier, pain exploding in his shins. Behind him, boots thundered, voices cursing. He ran, the truck a blurry shape in the fog, Lily's note burning a hole in his jacket. The sky was bleeding pink when Cal stumbled back to the truck, his breath ragged, the papers clutched tight. The pier faded into the mist behind him, the boathouse a ghost in the dawn. He banged on the driver's door, and Ellie unlocked it fast, her eyes wide as he slid in, mud streaking the seat. "Go," she said, shoving the keys at him. "They're coming." Cal didn't argue, the rumble of an engine cut through the quiet, headlights flaring in the rearview. He cranked the ignition, the truck lurching as he peeled out, tires spitting on wet gravel. Noah clung to the back seat, his blanket bunched around him, while Ellie braced against the dash, her flashlight rolling to the floor. The SUV roared up behind them, black and relentless, its grille a snarl in the mirror. Cal floored it, the road winding tight through the trees, branches scraping the truck's sides. "Who's driving?" he snapped, swerving to dodge a pothole. "Scar guy," Ellie said, twisting to look. "And another one big, with a bandage." "Buzz cut." Cal cursed under his breath, he'd hit the bastard last night, but not hard enough. The SUV rammed them, metal screeching, shoving the truck forward. Cal fought the wheel, his shoulder throbbing where the knife had grazed him, blood soaking through his sleeve. "Hold on," he shouted, yanking the truck off-road, crashing through a gap in the pines. The terrain jolted them hard, roots and rocks banging the undercarriage, but the SUV followed, relentless. Branches snapped, leaves flying, the forest a blur of green and brown. A gunshot cracked, shattering the back window. Noah yelped, ducking low, glass raining into the blanket. Cal swerved again, the truck bouncing over a fallen log, his teeth rattling in his skull. "Stay down," he barked, one hand on the gun, the other steering blind. The SUV closed in, its horn blaring a taunt, a threat. Then a voice cut through, loud and smug, amplified by the wind. "Pull over, Harrow. You're done." Cal's blood froze. "Carver." That slow drawl, thick as molasses, unmistakable even over the chaos. The sheriff was just watching, he was leading the hunt. Carver S with him, Cal said, his voice tight. Son of a bitch. Ellie's face hardened, no surprise in her eyes. Told you. The truck hit a clearing, the ground leveling out, and Cal gunned it, the speedometer climbing. The SUV matched him, pulling alongside. Carver S faced a shadow in the passenger window. Buzzcut drove, his bandaged arm stiff, while Scarface leaned out, pistol gleaming. A shot punched the side mirror, glass exploding. Cal ducked, shoving Ellie's head down, and fired back through the broken window, 2 rounds that pinged off the SUV's hood. Carver laughed, a cold, hollow sound that made Cal's skin crawl. You're digging your grave, Harrow, Carver yelled. Lily's long gone, sold high. Give up the brats, and maybe you walk away. Cal's vision tunneled, rage boiling over. Where is she, you bastard? He roared, swerving to ram the SUV's flank. Metal crunched, sparks flying, but Carver held steady, his grin a slash in the dawn. Out of your reach, Carver shouted back. Vancouver, last I checked. Pretty little thing like her fetched a fortune. The word hit like a sledgehammer. Vancouver, matching the papers in his jacket. Cal's hand shook, but he kept the truck straight, the forest thinning as they neared the highway. He had to lose them, had to get the kids out. Scarface fired again, the bullet grazing Cal's shoulder, hot pain searing through him. He gritted his teeth, blood dripping onto the seat, and jerked the wheel hard, sending the truck skidding across the asphalt. The SUV overshot, tires squealing as Buzzcut fought to turn. Cal didn't wait, he floored it, the highway stretching out, empty and slick with dawn's dew. The SUV recovered, gaining fast, but a bend loomed ahead, sharp and treacherous. He took it tight, the truck tilting, tires screaming, and for a second, he thought they'd flip. They didn't. The SUV wasn't so lucky it swung wide, clipping a tree, the crash echoing like thunder. Cal kept going, the wreckage shrinking in the mirror, his shoulder burning, his breath short. Ellie sat up, her face pale but fierce, while Noah peeked over the seat, eyes huge. They're down, she said, a tremble in her voice. For now, Cal muttered, steering toward the cabin. Carver's words, Vancouver, sold high, pounded in his skull, a lead he couldn't shake. The cabin's shadow fell over the truck as Cal pulled up, the engine coughing as he cut it off. Blood soaked his sleeve, his shoulder a throbbing mess, but he ignored it, staggering out to scan the woods. No headlights, no engines, just the drip of dew from the pines, and the faint crash of waves in the distance. The SUV was out, but Carver wouldn't stay down long. Inside, he said, waving Ellie and Noah ahead. Move. Ellie hauled Noah out, his blanket dragging, her flashlight tucked into her waistband. They bolted up the porch steps, Cal limping behind, his gun still in hand. The door slammed shut, the lock clicking, and he leaned against it, catching his breath. The cabin smelled of last night's fire, the air heavy with damp wood and tension. Sit, he said, pointing to the couch. I need to patch this up. Ellie didn't sit, she followed him to the kitchen, grabbing a towel from the counter. You're bleeding bad, she said, pressing it to his shoulder. Let me help. Cal winced, the pressure sharp but steady. You're 12, kid. I've got it. You're slow, she shot back, her hands firm. And we're not going back. Not ever. He met her gaze, saw the steel in it, and nodded. Fair enough. Noah hovered nearby, clutching his pendant, his voice small. They're gonna find us, aren't they? Not if I can help it, Cal said, digging a first aid kit from a drawer. He tore open a gauze pack with his teeth, Ellie taping it over the wound, her fingers quick and sure. The bleeding slowed, the pain a dull roar, but his mind was on Carver, Vancouver, Lily, the list in his jacket. We need a plan, he said, slumping into a chair. They've got numbers, firepower. I've got you too, and a truck on its last legs. Ellie crossed her arms, her jaw set. We can fight. We've done it before. Cal raised an eyebrow. Fight? You're kids. We got away, Noah said, stepping closer. Set traps in the house, string nails. Slowed him down. Cal stared, the image sinking in two kids, alone, rigging a death trap to survive. All right, he said, leaning forward. What do you use? Stuff they left around, Ellie said. Rope, buckets, anything sharp. Knocked a guy out once with a chair. A grin tugged at Cal's lips, grim but real. You're tougher than you look. Had to be, she said, no pride in it, just fact. The woods outside were quiet, but Cal knew it wouldn't last. Carver'd call in reinforcements, scour the town. The cabin was a hideout, not a fortress. We've got trees, tools, he said, thinking out loud. Can you rig something out there? Ellie's eyes lit up, a spark of purpose. Yeah. Give us wire, rocks will make him trip. Cal grabbed a spool of fishing line from the closet, a bucket of old nails, and a hammer. Show me. They worked fast, the fog their cover. Ellie strung the line between trees, ankle high, tying nails to branches that'd swing down if triggered. Noah piled rocks, small but heavy, stacking them to roll underfoot. Cal watched, his shoulders stiff, marveling at their focused kids who turned survival into an art. An hour later, the traps circled the cabin, invisible in the mist. Cal tested one, brushing the line. A branch snapped down, missing his head by inches. Damn, he muttered. That Ella leave a mark. Ellie smirked, the first crack in her armor. Told you. Back inside, Cal grabbed his radio, static hissing as he tuned it. He needed help, someone outside Carver's reach. Mara Vega's name hit him hard, his old partner from the state police, a bulldog with a badge, stationed an hour south. She'd lost a brother to a cold case, hated dirty cops as much as he did. Mara, it's Cal, he said, keying the mic. You there? The line crackled, then her voice cut through, crisp and no nonsense. Harrow? You sound like hell. What is up? Trouble, he said, glancing at the kids. Big. Sheriff's dirty, running kids through the docks. Got two with me, and they're after us. A pause, then, Carver? You're sure? Saw him myself, Cal said. Chased us at dawn. Mentioned Lily said she's in Vancouver. Jesus, Mara breathed. Stay put. I'm rolling now, no locals, just me. Give me an hour. Make it fast, Cal said, signing off. The radio went dead, and Noah tugged his sleeve. They're coming. Cal heard it, 2 engines, faint but growing, rumbling through the fog. He grabbed his gun, motioning the kids to the back. Hide. If it goes south, you run? Ellie shook her head, fierce. We're in this together. The engines roared closer, headlights piercing the mist. Cal stepped onto the porch, pistol ready, the traps a silent promise in the trees. Whatever came next, they defaced him, and 2 kids who'd already beaten the odds. The fog thickened around the cabin, swallowing the pines as the rumble of engines grew into a growl. Cal stood on the porch, pistol gripped tight, his shoulder throbbing under the makeshift bandage. Ellie and Noah crouched behind him, peering through the cracked window, their traps glinting faintly in the mist, fishing line and nails, a kid as desperate stand against the dark. The headlights cut closer, 2 sets, slicing through the gray like knives. Get back, Cal hissed, waving them inside. Now. Ellie pulled Noah away, her flashlight clutched like a talisman, but her eyes stayed on the yard, fierce and unyielding. Cal braced himself, the papers from the boathouse, Lily's name, Vancouver burning a hole in his jacket. Carver was out there, and this time, he wasn't running. The first vehicle burst into view, not the black SUV, but a gray state police cruiser, its lights flashing red and blue. Relief hit Cal like a shot of whiskey, sharp and warm. Mara Vega's rig. The second set of headlights belonged to a beat-up Jeep, trailing behind, no markings. She'd kept it quiet, just like he'd asked. The cruiser skidded to a stop, gravel spraying, and Mara stepped out, her boots crunching the ground. 35, lean as a whip, her dark ponytail whipping in the wind. She carried a shotgun like it was an extension of her arm. Her eyes locked on Cal, scanning the blood on his sleeve, the gun in his hand. "Christ, Harrow," she said, her voice cutting through the fog. "You look like you've been through a meat grinder." "Feel like it," Cal said, lowering his pistol. "Glad you're here." Mara jerked her head toward the Jeep, where a lanky guy in a flannel shirt climbed out, hauling a duffel bag. "That SP Tech guy off the books. You said no locals, so it's just us." Cal nodded, stepping off the porch. "Carver's dirty. Chased us at dawn with 2 goons. Said Lily S. in Vancouver sold, not dead." Mara's jaw tightened, a flicker of something personal crossing her face. She'd lost her brother to a case that went cold, a drug deal gone wrong, and it defueled her ever since. "That's a hell of an accusation," she said. "You got proof?" He pulled the papers from his jacket, handing them over the list, the Polaroid, Lily's note. Mara flipped through them, her expression hardening with every page. "Shipping logs, Kid S names Vancouver S on here, all right. This is big, Cal, bigger than Willow Creek." "Tell me about it," he said, glancing back at the cabin. "Those kids in their Ellie and Noah, they've been running mules for 2 years, maybe more." Mara whistled low, tucking the papers into her vest. "And Carver S. the ringmaster?" "Saw him myself," Cal said. "He us not just turning a blind eye, he us calling shots." Pete ambled over, his duffel clinking with gear. "Got a laptop in here," he said, his voice a lazy drawl. "If there's digital trails, I'll find him. Need a signal, though." "Cabin's a dead zone," Cal said. "We'll figure it out. First, we need to." A crack split the air, a branch snapping, loud and deliberate. Then a yell, sharp and pained, echoed from the trees. "Elias traps." Cal spun, gun up, Mara falling in beside him, shotgun ready. "They're here," he said, his voice low. The fog shifted, and a figure staggered out, buzz cut, the tall bastard from the pier, his leg caught in fishing line, blood seeping through his pants where a nail had gouged him. He cursed, fumbling for a pistol, but Mara fired first, a warning shot that kicked dirt at his feet. "Drop it," she barked, advancing. "State police, you're done." Buzzcut froze, then tossed the gun, hands up, his face twisted in a snarl. "You're dead, cop," he spat at Cal. "All of you." "Shut it," Mara said, cuffing him with a zip tie from her belt. "Pete, get him in the Jeep." Pete hauled the guy off, muttering about overtime, while Cal scanned the woods. "There's more," he said. "Carver 1T come alone." Mara nodded, her shotgun still raised. "We need to move. This place is compromised." Ellie poked her head out, Noah behind her. "Told you they'd come." "Yeah, you did," Cal said, waving them over. "Stick with us." Mara eyed the kids, her expression softening for a split second. "Tough little bastards, huh?" "Tougher than me," Cal said, leading them to the cruiser. "We need a safe spot somewhere Carver can't touch." "My office," Mara said, climbing in. "Hour south, state jurisdiction. He has got no pull there." The truck stayed behind, too battered to risk, and they piled into the cruiser, Cal shotgun, Ellie and Noah in back, Pete following in the Jeep with Buzzcut trussed up. The engine roared, tires spitting gravel as Mara peeled out, the cabin shrinking in the fog. Halfway down the highway, Mara broke the silence. "These papers, they're a start, But we need more. Carver is tied to a network, Cal. Shipping companies, port logs. I've seen this before. Kids move like cargo, across borders. Vancouver, Cal said, the word a stone in his throat. That S where he said Lily went. We'll chase it, Mara said, her eyes on the road. But it's not just her. This is dozens, maybe hundreds. Cal leaned back, the Polaroid burning against his chest. I just need her back. I know, Mara said, quieter. We'll get there. The state police outpost sat an hour south of Willow Creek, a squat concrete box on the edge of a coastal bluff, waves crashing below. Mara pulled in as dusk fell, the fog thinning to reveal a sky streaked with orange and purple. Cal stepped out, his shoulders stiff, the kids trailing behind, their faces pale but set. Pete parked the jeep, Buzzcut glaring from the back, his legs still bleeding through the zip ties. Inside, the outpost hummed a handful of troopers, radios crackling, coffee brewing in a corner. Mara led them to a back room, a makeshift warren of desks and file cabinets, Pete setting up his laptop on a table littered with donut crumbs. Interrogate him, Mara said, nodding at Buzzcut. I'll dig into these papers. Cal hauled the guy into a chair, the metal scraping the floor. Buzzcut smirked, his buzzed head gleaming under the fluorescent lights. You're wasting your time, cop. We'll see, Cal said, leaning in close, his voice low. You're gonna talk, or I'll let the kids have a crack at you. They're good with traps. The smirk faltered, but he shrugged. I ain't saying shit. Mara stepped in, slamming the shipping logs on the table. This says different. Names, dates you're on here, Ricky. Moving kids for Carver. Where is he holed up? Ricky's eyes flicked to the papers, then away. Don't know what you're talking about. Cal grabbed his collar, yanking him forward. Lily Harrow. 5 years old, pink coat. Where did she go? Ricky laughed, a wet, ugly sound. Vancouver, like the boss said. Good luck finding her. She is somebody's princess now. Cal's fist clenched, but Mara put a hand on his arm. Easy, she said, then turned to Ricky. Give us Carver, or you're looking at life. No deals. Ricky sneered, but a bead of sweat rolled down his temple. Lighthouse, he muttered. Old one up the coast. That S where he keeps him before they ship. Cal's blood ran cold. The lighthouse, a crumbling relic 5 miles north of Willow Creek, abandoned since the 80s. He'd driven past it 100 times, never thought twice. How many? He asked. 5, maybe 6, Ricky said, slumping back. New batch. Mara nodded at a trooper. Lock him up. We're moving. The drive north was fast, the cruiser's lights cutting through the dusk. Cal rode with Mara, Ellie and Noah in back, Pete tailing in the jeep. The lighthouse loomed ahead, its cracked lens staring blindly at the sea, a rusted fence sagging around the base. 2 vehicles sat out front, the black SUV, dented from the crash, and Carver's sheriff's truck, lights off. He is here, Cal said, his voice tight. Mara parked 100 yards out, killing the engine. We going quiet. You take the front, I'll circle back. Cal nodded, checking his pistol. Kids, stay. No, Ellie cut in, her flashlight glowing. We're coming. He opened his mouth to argue, saw the steel in her eyes, and gave up. Fine. Behind me. They crept through the fog, the lighthouse as shadows swallowing them. Cal hit the front door, a heavy slab of wood hanging loose, and slipped inside. The air was damp, thick with salt and mildew, the stairs spiraling up like a rusted spine. Faint cries echoed down, kids, scared and small. He climbed, Ellie and Noah close, their breaths shallow. The top opened into a wide room, the cracked lens looming over a cluster of crates. 5 kids huddled in a corner, wrists tied, eyes wide, none older than 10. Carver stood by the window, pistol in hand, his mustache twitching as he barked into a radio. "Find him," he snapped. "Harrow's got the brats, I want him back." Cal stepped out, gun raised. "Drop it, Dale." Carver spun, his face twisting into a snarl. "You're a dead man, Cal." Mara burst in from the back, shotgun leveled. "State police." "You're surrounded." Carver laughed, cold and sharp. "Surrounded? Just you two and some kids?" "Enough," Cal said, advancing. "Where's Lily?" "Vancouver," Carver said, his grin wicked. "Fancy family, big house. You'll never touch her." Cal lunged, slamming Carver against the wall, the radio clattering to the floor. The sheriff swung, his fist catching Cal's jaw, but Cal drove a knee into his gut, doubling him over. Mara moved in, cuffing his hands as he gasped. Ellie ran to the kids, cutting their ropes with Cal's knife, Noah helping them stand. "You're safe," she said, her voice steady. Carver spat blood, glaring up at Cal. "You think this ends it?" "It's bigger than me." "We'll see," Cal said, hauling him up as Mara called for backup. Chuang 12. The USB Revelation. Koang 2002. Back at the outpost, the lighthouse kids were wrapped in blankets, troopers taking statements as night settled in. Carver sat cuffed in a holding cell, silent now, his smirk gone. Cal slumped at a desk, his shoulder patched by a medic, the Polaroid of Lily trembling in his hands. Ellie and Noah hovered nearby, their flashlight and pendant the only things keeping them grounded. Mara dropped a small USB drive on the table, fished from Ellie's lantern where she'd hidden it after the cabin fight. "Found this," she said. "Pete's cracking it now." Pete hunched over his laptop, fingers flying, the screen glowing blue in the dim room. "Encrypted," he muttered. "But I've got it." The files opened spreadsheets, photos, audio clips. Names scrolled past, dozens of kids, ages, destinations. Lily Harrow, 5, Vancouver, premium placement. A photo loaded Lily, older now, blonde hair longer, standing in a park with a family Cal didn't he know. An audio file played, Carver's voice crackling, "Move the Harrow girl north. She's worth double." Cal's chest caved, hope and grief colliding. "She's alive," he whispered, tears burning his eyes. Mara squeezed his shoulder. "We've got a lead, Vancouver, specific broker. I'm calling the Canadians now." Ellie leaned in, her voice soft. "You'll find her?" "Yeah," Cal said, the word of vow. "And every damn one of 'em." Pete kept scrolling, more names, more cities: Seattle, Portland, overseas. "This is a network," he said. "Carver's just a cog." Mara nodded, her jaw set. "We'll dismantle it. Starting with him." Cal stared at Lily's photo, the USB a lifeline to a girl he'd lost and found. Vancouver was next, a fight not over, but just beginning. The rain streaked the windshield of Mara's cruiser as they crossed into Canada, the border checkpoint a blur of lights and paperwork behind them. Cal sat shotgun, his shoulder bandaged tight, the Polaroid of Lily tucked into his jacket like a heartbeat. Ellie and Noah huddled in the back, their faces pressed to the windows, watching the highway unfold toward Vancouver. The USB's data burned in his mind. Lily Harrow, Vancouver, premium placement, a lead so close he could taste it, bitter and sweet. Mara drove steady, her knuckles white on the wheel, the wiper slapping a rhythm against the drizzle. "Canadian Mounties are meeting us in this city," she said, her voice cutting through the hum of the engine. "They've got a file on this broker guy named Kessler, runs a fake adoption ring. If Lily's there, they'll know." Cal nodded, his throat too tight to speak. For years, he'd chased shadows, lake water, empty trails, a sneaker by the shore. Now she was real again, 9 years old, somewhere in this sprawl of glass and steel. He glanced at the kids, Ellie clutching her flashlight, Noah twisting his whale pendant. They brought him this far, two survivors who declawed their way out of hell. You okay? Mara asked, her eyes flicking to him. No, Cal said, honest. But I will be. The city rose around them, towers glinting wet in the dusk, traffic a slow crawl through the rain. The Mounties met them at a precinct downtown, two officers, a woman with a buzz cut and a guy with a beard, both in red serge jackets that looked too formal for the grim work ahead. The woman, Sergeant Claire Dubois, shook Cal's hand, her grip firm. We've tracked Kessler, she said, spreading a map on a table. Operates out of a house in Kitsilano upscale, quiet. Your USB matches our intel. He has placed dozens of kids, falsified papers. Your girl's code LH05 popped up in his records. Shipped 4 years ago. Cal's chest tightened, the air thin. She is there? Likely, Dubois said, tapping the map. Family named Bennett took her and thought it was legit. We're moving tonight, low profile. You're with us, but you stay back, Harrow. This is our turf. He wanted to argue, to storm the place himself, but Mara's hand on his arm stopped him. Let them work, she said. We'll get her. The drive to Kitsilano was silent, the streets narrowing into tree-lined lanes, houses glowing warm behind trimmed hedges. The Bennett's place was a 2-story craftsman, cedar shingles and a wraparound porch, picture perfect except for the lie it hid. Cal stayed in the cruiser with Ellie and Noah, parked a block away, his hands clenched as the Mounties moved in quiet, shadows slipping through the dusk. Ellie leaned forward, her voice soft. What if she doesn't know you anymore? Cal swallowed, the question a knife. Then I'll remind her. Every damn day if I have to. Noah tugged his sleeve, his eyes big. She'll remember. I do remember my dad. The radio crackled. Dubois' voice, clipped. We're inside. Girl is here. Stand by. Cal's heart slammed against his ribs, every second stretching into years. He stared at the house, the porch light flickering, rain tapping the roof like a countdown. Then the door opened, and Dubois stepped out, waving them in. Cal bolted, Mara and the kids behind, his boots splashing through puddles. The living room was warm, cluttered with books and toys, a stark contrast to the cold truth. A couple the Bennetts sat on a couch, faces pale, hands clasped tight. And there, by the stairs, stood Lily 9 now, taller, her blonde hair tied back, a crescent birthmark peeking from her collar. She wore a yellow sweater, no pink coat, but those eyes wide, blue, his stopped him dead. Lily? He said, his voice breaking. She tilted her head, a frown creasing her brow. Who are you? The Bennett stood, the woman Mrs. Bennett stepping forward. She is Sophie now, she said, her voice trembling. We adopted her. She is ours. Cal shook his head, tears burning. She is mine. Lily Harrow. They took her from me. Dubois held up a hand, her tone firm. We've got the papers. She is his daughter, ma'am. Kidnapped, not adopted. Lily Sophie backed up, clutching the railing, her eyes darting between them. I don't understand. Cal knelt, slow, his hands out. I'm your dad, kiddo. You were 5, at the lake. You had a pink coat, loved fireflies. I lost you, but I never stopped looking. Her frown deepened, something flickering in her gaze, recognition, faint but real. I dream about a lake, she whispered, and a man with a star. His badge glinted on his chest, and he pointed to it, voice thick. This star. That is me. She stared, then took a step, hesitant, like testing ice. Daddy? The word shattered him. He nodded, tears spilling, and she ran, crashing into his arms. He held her tight, her hair soft against his cheek, the years melting away. I've got you, he said, over and over. I've got you. Ellie and Noah watched, silent, their own scars softening in the glow. Mara wiped her eyes, turning to Du Bois. "We're done here." The precinct buzzed with quiet chaos, troopers shuffling papers, Kessler in cuffs down the hall. Cal sat in a break room, Lily on his lap, her small hands tracing the badge on his chest. She was real warm, breathing, her voice a soft echo of the girl he'd lost. The Bennetts were gone, escorted out in tears, their world upended. Cal didn't care that he had her 4 years, but she was his again. Ellie and Noah sprawled on a couch nearby, sharing a bag of chips from a vending machine, their flashlight and pendant resting between them. Mara leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching with a faint smile. "You remember anything?" Cal asked, brushing a strand of hair from Lily's face. She nodded, slow. "Bits. Water, trees. You singing something about a moon." "Blue moon," he said, his voice catching. "You'd hum it off key." She giggled, a sound that broke him open, and nestled closer. "They called me Sophie. Said I was an orphan." "You're not," he said, fierce. "You're Lily Harrow. Always will be." The door swung open, Du Bois stepping in with a file. "We've got more," she said, dropping it on the table. "Kessler's talking gave up names, routes. Your girl's one of dozens placed here. We're tracking the rest." Cal nodded, his arm tightening around Lily. "Good. Shut it down." Mara pushed off the wall. Carver's network's unraveling. Vancouver's just the start, Seattle, Portland, overseas. "We'll need you stateside, Cal." "Later," he said, his eyes on Lily. "I'm not leaving her." Du Bois crouched, meeting Lily's gaze. "You're brave, kid. Helped us crack this wide open." Lily frowned, confused. "I didn't do anything." "You lived," Cal said, kissing her forehead. "That's enough." Outside, the rain eased to a mist, the city lights smearing across wet streets. Cal led Lily out, Ellie and Noah trailing, their steps lighter now. The air was cold, clean, washing away the grime of Willow Creek. He stopped by the cruiser, Lily's hand small in his, and turned to the kids. "You two sticking with me?" he asked. Ellie shrugged, a half smile tugging her lips. "Got nowhere else." Noah nodded, his pendant swinging. "You're okay, Mr. Cal." Mara joined them, keys jangling. "We'll sort custody later. For now, they're yours." Cal looked at Lily, then Ellie and Noah, a makeshift family forged in fire. "Guess I've got room." The drive back was quiet, the kids dozing in the back, Lily's head on his shoulder. Her yellow sweater glowed in the dashboard light, a new color for a new start. He'd lost her once, but not again, not to rain, not to shadows, not to anything. Willow Creek woke slow under a fresh fog, the pines dripping as the town stirred. Cal pulled into the driveway of a rental house on the outskirts, a simple ranch, white siding and a porch swing, a far cry from the cabin's ghosts. Lily sat beside him, her eyes bright, Ellie and Noah in back, their few belongings stuffed in a duffel Mara had scrounged. The lighthouse bust had cracked the network-wide Carver in jail, Kessler spilling names, dozens of kids traced across borders. Cal had stayed in Vancouver a week, paperwork and tears, bringing Lily home. Ellie and Noah came too, wards of the state, until he could make it official. The town was healing, scars and all. He cut the engine, the quiet settling in. "This is it," he said, nodding at the house. "New start." Lily climbed out, her sneakers crunching gravel, and ran to the swing, testing it with a push. Ellie followed, her flashlight tucked in her pocket, a habit she wouldn't shake. Noah hung back, pendant in hand, until Cal waved him over. "See, Mon, kid," he said. "You're home." June Haskell rolled up in her old pickup, a casserole dish steaming in her arms. "Heard you were back," she said, climbing out, her silver hair glinting. Figured you'd need food. Thanks, June, Cal said, taking the dish, the smell of cheese and potatoes a warm punch. You didn't have to. Bull, she said, grinning. You gave us back our soul, Cal. Least I can do. The town square buzzed that afternoon, a ceremony unfolding under the fog. A new sign went up Harrow Park honoring the fight, the kids saved, the truth unearthed. Cal stood with Lily, Ellie, and Noah, the crowd clapping soft, their faces a mix of pride and shame. Mara joined them, her badge glinting. Network is down, she said. 50 kids found so far. More to go. Good, Cal said, his arm around Lily. Keep it rolling. Ellie tugged his sleeve, pointing at the swings. We helped, right? Damn right, he said, ruffling her hair. You're heroes. Noah grinned, rare and bright. Can we play? Go, Cal said, watching them run, Lily leading the charge. The fog hugged the park, laughter cutting through, a sound he'd forgotten he could love. June sidled up, her voice low. You did good, Cal. They're tough little bastards. Yeah, he said, his eyes on the kids. Tougher than me. The swing creaked, Lily's laugh ringing out, and for the first time in 4 years, Cal felt the weight lift not gone, but lighter. Home wasn't a place anymore, it was them, swinging in the mist, a family he'd fight for, always.